Morning campers, coffee time. Or as some wiseacre said, did you used to watch Heidi High? Yes, I did. Morning campers. Heidi Hey. I'll only mean something to people over 50 in the UK. But anyway, is Donald Trump going to save the world? That's a good question, isn't it? Being a Donald Trump supporter in this world has been extremely testing. Let's put it that way. It's testing. Yeah. Billions and billions of tests. So I'll tell you my version of events because and lots of thoughts pop into my head, and I do these videos off the top of my head, so excuse me if I miss some things, but let's give you an example. In 2020 lockdowns, I went into an Irish gas station to Americans, and I asked for a sandwich because I was still eating bread back then, and I got chatting, lovely woman behind the counter, and then she said something along the lines of like about the COVID, and then she said, well, I hope that Donald Trump dies when he gets the COVID. And I was like, whoa, I only came in for a sandwich. And that was kind of typical. I also had a friend of mine, I think in 2019 on Facebook, because I was putting up some pro-Trump posts on Facebook back when I was on, I've not been on Facebook for a couple of years now. My page is still there, but I can't access it, so if you've left me a message, I apologise, I can't get in to get back to you. But anyway, on Facebook, a really good friend of mine fucking went mad at me and defriended me, and went on about, no, it was 2020, went on about the fact that his brother was in hospital with a COVID, and it was all Donald Trump's fault for some reason. Then there was the time in Marrakesh when I lived there. There was a very well-heeled woman who was very woke, just happened to be in a hotel chatting, and then we got to the subject of the 2016 election, because it was that year. And this is when I realised there was something stranger afoot about the politics of America at that time, now the world, that I didn't realise before that. And this has come about because I've been driving around listening to podcasts and stuff, and I'd heard Donald Trump speaking. And when he first stood for president, I was like, well, he's just another billionaire, another George Bush who's going to blah, 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 Republican, blah, blah, blah. And but then I was listening to him speak, and it suddenly hit me that he was speaking in code, and I had to pull the car over and sit and really listen to what he was saying. And I guess I've spent 7 years listening to what he's saying and realising it's all in code. And this coincided then in 2017 with the Q posts, the Q drops, which started to correlate with a lot of what Trump was talking about. And also a lot of the conspiracies that I'd been studying for years were coming out in these Q drops. And then that suddenly became a cult that teaches you to think for yourself, because that's what the Q drops did. And if you look at David Icke, he'll say Q is just another psyop to corral people, and lots of people will say it's another psyop to corral people into a thing. And it's, you know, even my best friend, one of my best friends, when I was writing, creating a lot of poems, video poems. If you don't know that I'm a poet, and I produced a bunch of poems, starting with If 2020. Lockdown, shutdown, breakdown, and then I produced a poem called The Best Is Yet to Come. And I was posting these poems to my friend in England, and there's more to this story, but anyway, I sent these poems, and he sent me a thing back going, you're going down a very dangerous path, stop sending me these poems. And he was also, previously, when I'd met him, he had told me that I was in a cult. And I thought this was hilarious. So I was like, a cult? What kind of cult? Here's a man who's been president, who's stopped the immigration, who's not been to war with anybody, who's created an incredible economy, who was bringing people together, and there was him going, I was going down a very dangerous road. But the woman in Marrakesh, what I realised at that point was how strange this was, is that we were talking about the election, and I just said, I said something, and she went, you don't support Donald Trump, do you? Except she said it in a kind of Parisian way. And I went, well, I'm not supporting the mass murderer Hillary Clinton, that's for damn sure. I mean, I can't even vote in America, so, you know, what does she mean anyway? But when I said that, she stood up and she literally went backwards about 20 feet, right? This is this woman in her 60s in a very smart dress. Went backwards until she hit the glass wall of the exterior of the hotel, and then she started inching along the wall like this, looking really weird, getting on her phone, calling her husband, saying, pick me up, quick, 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 there's Trump supporters here. And I was like, what? It was like some sort of, it was magic. It was like she was under a spell, and suddenly I was saying something that was so, anyway, I'd never seen a reaction like that in my life, but there's just a reaction after reaction, because Trump somehow pulls out these reactions in people, which is really extraordinary. And there's people call it, and also over the last 4 years since I started my podcast, you wouldn't believe the amount of people who've told me different things about Donald Trump. Oh God, where do I start? One guy I interviewed told me off camera that the original Trump was taken out and there was a clone or a replacement. There's when I was on tour in America, there was I got to know Derek Johnson pretty well, and he pretty conclusively says, no, although not everybody agrees with him, although I don't know how they can't, that Trump was still the commander-in-chief, which I believe. There's other people, if you go back, have said the military asked Donald Trump to to go run for the presidency because he was rich enough to not be corruptible. He was, he wanted to save America, and the military asked him to be in charge and to be the front man of a military operation. Now, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think it actually goes back further, though, because if you look into Donald Trump and go back and look at the adventures of Baron von Trump, I think that's what they're called. I've got the book at home. And 3 books written by Ingersoll Lockwood in the 1890s about the time-traveling adventures of Baron von Trump. Now, Donald Trump's youngest son is called Baron Trump. Is that a coincidence? Well, it gets weirder, because in those books, he has his best friend is called Don from New York, I think on the same street as where Trump Tower is, don't quote me on that, who becomes the last president of the United States of America. Now, that sounds crazy, doesn't it? A little bit crazy. And if you consider that America became a corporation in, I'm going to get the year wrong, 1872, I can't remember exactly when it was, but America got taken over by the British Crown and became a corporation like every other government in the world, and has not been a true government since then. Then Donald Trump, as the 45th president, would have been the last president of the United States of America Corporation. Is he the first president of the real America? I'd say so. I think he is. I mean, do you remember that Time magazine cover where it was like Trump 2024, 2028, 2032? It just went on, and he said, looks good to me. That's very interesting. You've got the fact that his daughter, Ivanka, who I call president in a poem called Fuck YouTube in 2021, just as a joke. But then Tom Numbers pointed out to me, I think you might be right about that. That would be interesting too. We're going through very interesting times. We just had Super Tuesday. Trump is now the official Republican presidential nominee, which means he's going to be getting security briefings, which means he can start saying things in public that he's not been able to do out of public. You know, and there's a big sea change. What I mean by that is be waking up people. Like, he had a meeting with Elon Musk this week. Elon Musk has been working with Trump for a long time. So do I think is RFK. I think Joe Biden that's not the real Joe Biden. And I think if you look at the clown show of what Joe Biden's been doing over the last 4 years, Trump refers to this in a lot of his speeches as the pause. And he said in a number of speeches, at least one, that, you had to see how bad it was going to get. And I subscribe to this, because we had to see, the human race had to see how bad it was going to get. That's why mass immigration and child trafficking had to continue. That's why we had to get taken to the brink of war. That's why the public had to witness the ridiculousness of Zelensky going around begging for money from everybody, and tax dollars worldwide being pumped into Ukraine, which is not even a country. I've got nothing against people from Ukraine. I understand people's caring about people coming from war-torn countries. Of course I do. but this is all a show. It's a real show, and real people die, but it's a show. Why? Because this is a spiritual war. It's all a spiritual war, and not enough of us understand this yet. And when I look into Trump, and there's loads of other things I could tell you, but I did make a film about going to meet him. I went down to his hotel in Ireland, and I made a little film called The Quest for Trump, which you can go and see on Rumble or themarkoutwoodshow.com, where I went down just on the off chance that I'd bump into him. And the weird thing was, when I did that, nobody searched me. I mean, this is like, whichever way you look at it, ex-president or real commander-in-chief, he's still one of the most powerful people on the entire planet. My car didn't get searched. I didn't get searched. One of the guards there said, "Morning, Mark." And I was in the same room as him for hours having dinner, and I had a good chat with Eric Trump, and I showed him a copy of my book. They wouldn't let me give him a copy of my book's called God Wins, and no, I'm not just trying to sell the book. I'm fucking joking. It cost me a fortune. But if you're interested, God Wins is on themarkoutwoodshow.com. But anyway, being a supporter of Donald Trump has been a real test of faith over the last few years. And you're either somebody that is awake and aware that this is a spiritual war, and that Donald Trump is representing a group of people that have been trying to remove a dark cabal of monsters for a very, very long time. In fact, I would go as far as to say that not only is Donald Trump a time traveler, he's also part of this Q movement. Now, if you go and look at JFK's grave, it's in the shape of a Q. Donald Trump is constantly doing air Qs all the way through the last seven years. Yeah, he's definitely part of Q. And I think if you're still doubting this, just go and look up. I don't know where you find it actually, but in 2017, Donald Trump did a tour of the world where he walked in front of the Queen outside Buckingham Palace. That's the Queen capitulating to him. The Saudis gave him a sword dance, which is reserved for kings. You know, they don't just do that for anybody. There was other things as well. I think he went into the Red Army in China, the place where no leader had ever been. He went to meet King Jong-un, or however you say his name. And there's just lots and lots of things like that people have not seen because they've got Trump derangement syndrome. So is he the saviour of the human race? Well, not on his own, but he's certainly part of the team that has been doing as much as possible to help us get through this and get through the other side, which is why. And then the other thing is, he's talked in code, but I don't think he's ever told a lie in a direct sense. And when a man, you know, who else is there? That's the other thing. Who else really is there to be the figurehead to get us through this? Because if he's not part of a big team of military people that have been trying to save us, and I'm literally mean save us, there's thousands of deep underground bases full of things that you couldn't imagine, like millions of miles of tunnels full of children that have been used for adrenochrome trafficking and harvesting forever. You know, this is a massive, massive military operation to get rid of these and to catch all the people, all the minions. Because I believe the head of the snake was taken out pre-COVID. And when I say head of the snake, I'm talking about all the families that really controlled the world, like the Orsinis and the Rothschilds, but in Venice and stuff, places like that. And look at what's going on with the royal family. Disappearing. And look at a lot of the CEOs, all the CEO resignations. Look at the fact that Twitter is now full of free speech, mainly. It's a war on consciousness. It's a spiritual war. If I'm wrong about Donald Trump, we're fucked anyway. Really. So there are my thoughts. Have a lovely day. God bless you.